There are people who speak of solitude as if it were sacred. They describe quiet as freedom, aloneness as depth, distance as clarity. Their rooms feel intentional, their silence feels chosen. And yet, beneath the poetry of independence, something more complex quietly breathes. Romanticizing solitude is not simply loving one's own company. It is a psychological relationship with absence, control, safety, and meaning. Sometimes it is wisdom, sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is a beautiful story told to soften a deeper ache. This story explores the inner world of those who turn solitude into identity, why the mind frames isolation as elegance, how independence becomes refuge, and where the line quietly blurs between peace and emotional distance. Solitude, for some, feels like art. It is framed as intentional, elegant, even enlightened. The quiet morning coffee, the empty room lit by late afternoon sun, the sense of being untouched, uninterrupted, unclaimed. Those who romanticize their solitude often speak of it with reverence. They describe aloneness as clarity, independence as strength, silence as wisdom. They are not wrong. There is beauty in solitude. There is truth in learning how to exist without noise, validation, or constant interaction. But the psychology of romanticized solitude goes deeper than preference. It becomes an identity. Not just being alone, but being someone who chooses aloneness. Solitude offers control, no emotional negotiation, no misunderstandings, no disappointments quietly forming in the background. When alone, the emotional environment is predictable, contained, manageable. Nothing unexpected enters without permission. This sense of control feels peaceful, and peace becomes the justification. I'm calmer alone. I think better alone. I don't need much from people. These statements are not performances, they are sincerely felt truths. But they also quietly protect the nervous system from emotional unpredictability. Romanticized solitude often comes with a narrative of depth. Being alone is framed as reflective, philosophical, and introspective. Social energy is viewed as shallow or draining. Connection is not rejected outright, it is simply placed lower on the hierarchy of meaning. Solitude becomes proof of emotional maturity rather than a circumstance. There is pride here, subtle but present. A sense of being self-sufficient in a world perceived as dependent. The mind feels grounded in its ability to self-regulate without leaning outward. Needing little becomes a form of power. The environment reinforces this narrative. Books, films, and cultural imagery often portray solitude as poetic. The lone thinker, the quiet observer, the misunderstood depth. These images give language and legitimacy to the internal experience. Aloneness feels not empty, but curated. And yet, romanticizing solitude does not mean rejecting connection entirely. It means reframing distance as choice rather than loss. It means telling a story where solitude is elevated, so longing does not have to be acknowledged. The mind prefers meaning over ambiguity. If aloneness is beautiful, then absence does not need to hurt. There is comfort in this framing. Loneliness is heavy. Solitude is light. One feels like lack, the other feels like intention. By choosing the latter narrative, the mind protects itself from vulnerability. What often goes unnoticed is how easily this beauty becomes armor. The language of peace can gently conceal the avoidance of emotional risk. The pride in independence can quietly distance the self from intimacy, not because connection is unwanted, but because it is uncertain. Romanticized solitude feels safe because it asks little. It does not demand explanation, compromise, or emotional exposure. It allows the individual to remain whole without being witnessed. And yet, this chapter is not about suspicion. It is about understanding. Solitude, when chosen consciously, can be restorative and grounding. But when it becomes identity rather than experience, it deserves reflection. The beauty of being alone is real. The question is not why solitude feels good, but what it quietly protects and what it gently keeps at a distance. Long before solitude becomes a choice, it is often a lesson, learned quietly, absorbed without words. For many who romanticize being alone, independence was not first discovered in adulthood. It was rehearsed early, sometimes subtly, sometimes out of necessity. A child who learns not to ask too much, who senses that emotions are inconvenient, overwhelming, or unwelcome, who notices that comfort arrives inconsistently or not at all. In these environments, solitude becomes adaptive. Being alone feels safer than reaching out and being misunderstood. Emotional neglect is not always dramatic. It does not require cruelty or abandonment. Often, it exists in absence. Parents who are physically present but emotionally unavailable. Caregivers who provide structure but not attunement. Homes where feelings are minimized, rushed, or quietly ignored. The child learns something important. Inner life is private, needs are risky, self-soothing is reliable. In this context, solitude is not loneliness, it is regulation. A space where the nervous system can settle without negotiation or disappointment. A room where emotions do not need translation. Premature independence often follows. The child becomes mature, easy, self-sufficient. These labels are rewards for not needing too much. They reinforce the belief that autonomy is safer than attachment. The child learns to internalize comfort rather than expect it externally. Over time, this self-reliance becomes identity. The mind associates closeness with complexity, expectation, and emotional labor. Solitude, by contrast, feels clean, predictable, uncomplicated, even in households without neglect. Comparison can shape this conditioning. Children who feel overshadowed, misunderstood, or emotionally mismatched may retreat inward, not because connection is absent, but because it feels imprecise. Solitude becomes the place where the self can exist without distortion. These early adaptations are intelligent. They preserve stability, they reduce emotional injury, they allow the child to survive without constant disappointment. But adaptations do not expire automatically. What once protected the child can quietly shape the adult. The adult may now describe solitude as preference, not memory, as philosophy, not pattern, as peace, not protection, and often this is partially true. Yet beneath the poetry of independence lives a conditioned nervous system, one that learned early that closeness requires effort, tolerance, or sacrifice, one that equates emotional safety with self-containment. Romanticizing solitude becomes a way to dignify this conditioning, to give meaning to what was once necessity, to transform absence into elegance. This does not mean the solitude is false, it means it is layered. The mind does not remember the lesson as pain, it remembers it as competence. I learned to be okay alone. I don't rely on anyone, I function best in my own space. These are not defenses in disguise, they are truths shaped by experience, but they are also incomplete without context. Understanding early emotional conditioning does not invalidate the beauty of solitude, it deepens it. It reveals why silence feels grounding, why independence feels moral, why distance feels calm. And in this understanding, something softens. The mind realizes it did not choose solitude out of superiority or detachment, it learned it as a form of care. Solitude was not rejection of others, it was protection of the self. The mind does not simply experience solitude, it explains it. It gives it language, structure, and meaning. Over time, solitude becomes a story, carefully shaped, quietly defended. For those who romanticize being alone, independence is not just practical, it is philosophical. Needing little becomes a virtue, wanting less becomes wisdom. Reliance is reframed as weakness, while self-sufficiency is elevated to clarity. This narrative is soothing. It turns absence into intention, distance into discernment, silence into depth. I don't need anyone does not always mean I don't want connection. Often, it means I have learned to survive without it. The story protects dignity. It preserves coherence. It allows the self to feel whole without revisiting unmet needs. Cognitive framing plays a quiet role. The mind selectively attends to the benefits of solitude while minimizing its costs. Peace, productivity, reflection, these are emphasized. Longing, loneliness, and emotional hunger are reframed or dismissed as illusions. The narrative becomes internally consistent, resistant to contradiction. Solitude is also moralized. Those who seek constant connection may be viewed as shallow, needy, or unreflective. Those who enjoy being alone are seen, by themselves and sometimes by others, as evolved, introspective, or emotionally mature. This moral framing stabilizes identity. It creates hierarchy without hostility. Intellectualization strengthens the narrative further. Solitude is associated with creativity, philosophy, and introspection. Connection is linked to distraction, noise, and emotional clutter. The mind aligns with thinkers, writers, and artists who found meaning in isolation, reinforcing the idea that depth requires distance. This does not mean the narrative is false. There is truth here. Solitude can foster insight. Independence can build resilience. The danger is not the story itself, but its rigidity. When independence becomes absolute, it leaves little room for nuance. Needing others is not just uncomfortable, it becomes incongruent with identity. Longing feels like failure. Attachment feels like regression. The mind protects the narrative fiercely. Moments of loneliness are reframed as temporary. Desire for closeness is intellectualized away. Emotional signals are interpreted through the lens of self-sufficiency. This is not deception, it is coherence. The psyche prefers a stable story to a fragmented one. Romanticizing solitude allows the individual to feel intentional rather than reactive, strong rather than vulnerable, chosen rather than excluded. But stories shape experience. When solitude is elevated too high, connection is quietly devalued, not rejected but deprioritized, and with that, certain parts of the self remain underexpressed. Understanding these psychological narratives is not about dismantling independence. It is about loosening the grip of absolutes, recognizing that needing others does not negate depth, that solitude and connection are not opposites, but complementary states. The mind that tells itself a story of independence is not hiding weakness. It is preserving continuity. It is protecting a self that learned to be whole alone. Awareness does not demand rewriting the story. It simply invites the question, is this narrative a reflection of truth or a shelter from vulnerability? There is a version of peace that feels earned, quiet, spacious, undisturbed. And then there is a version of peace that feels guarded, still, but alert, calm, yet carefully maintained. For some, solitude becomes the place where nothing can hurt. not because pain is gone, but because nothing is close enough to reach it. Emotional avoidance rarely announces itself. It does not say I am afraid of closeness. It says I am better this way. It says I don't have the energy for people. It says I value my peace too much. And again, this is not untrue. People are draining. Relationships do require negotiation, misalignment, repair. But avoidance lives in the absolutes, in the quiet refusal to engage deeply at all. Those who romanticize solitude often carry relational fatigue, not from one experience but from accumulation. Being misunderstood too many times. Giving more than was returned. Explaining emotions that were minimized or dismissed. Eventually, the nervous system learns a shortcut: distance equals relief. Solitude removes the need to be seen accurately. There is no risk of being misread, no effort to clarify, no emotional labor of correction. The self remains intact, untouched by interpretation. Vulnerability is where avoidance sharpens. To be known is to be exposed. To connect deeply is to risk disappointment, abandonment, or erosion of self. Solitude offers insulation from these possibilities. So peace becomes strategic, not expansive but controlled, not open but protected. The mind reframes avoidance as discernment. I'm selective. I don't let many people in. I protect my energy. These statements feel grounded, even wise, and often they are. But they also quietly reduce the emotional bandwidth of life. Connection is not only pleasure, it is uncertainty. And uncertainty is what avoidance seeks to eliminate. What gets lost in this version of peace is friction. And friction is not only discomfort, it is intimacy, growth, surprise. It is the moment someone sees something unpolished and stays. Romanticized solitude ensures that no one sees the unpolished. The self remains composed, coherent, uninterrupted, but also unseen in its messier truths. This avoidance is rarely conscious. It is felt as preference, not fear, as lifestyle, not defense. And yet, the body often knows. A tightening at the thought of closeness, a subtle withdrawal when conversations deepen, an urge to retreat after moments of emotional exposure. Peace, in this context, is not the absence of noise, it is the absence of threat. Understanding this does not require dismantling solitude, it requires honesty. Solitude can be nourishing and protective at the same time. Avoidance can coexist with genuine appreciation for aloneness. The question is not whether solitude is good, it is whether peace has become a shield. Because true peace expands capacity, it allows connection without collapse, it tolerates discomfort without retreat. When solitude is used to avoid vulnerability, it narrows life quietly, not dramatically, not tragically, just enough to feel safe and slightly incomplete. Beneath the calm surface of romanticized solitude, attention often lives, not loud, not dramatic, just present enough to be felt in quiet moments. The human need for connection does not disappear simply because solitude feels safer, it waits. It surfaces in subtle ways, late at night, during moments of vulnerability, in the H that follows meaningful conversations that end too soon. Those who romanticize their solitude often experience ambivalence. A genuine appreciation for being alone exists alongside an unspoken longing to be known. These two states do not cancel each other out, they coexist, sometimes uneasily. The mind protects solitude fiercely because it works. It reduces emotional volatility. It minimizes disappointment. It preserves autonomy. And yet, the same mind occasionally reaches outward, curious, tentative, hopeful. This creates internal contradiction. When connection is desired, it feels risky. When solitude is chosen, it feels incomplete. The self oscillates between openness and withdrawal, attraction and retreat. Loneliness in this context is not constant, it arrives in waves, often dismissed quickly, explained away, reframed as temporary restlessness rather than emotional need. I'm not lonely, the mind insists. I just value depth. I just haven't met the right people. These statements are not denial, they are negotiations. Attempts to reconcile the longing for closeness with the fear of losing emotional equilibrium. There is also resistance to being needed. Connection implies responsibility, responding, adjusting, showing up. For someone who has learned to regulate themselves alone, this feels heavy. Dependence, whether given or received, threatens the carefully maintained balance of solitude. So closeness is approached cautiously. Boundaries are firm. Access is limited, vulnerability is rationed. Moments of intimacy may feel intoxicating at first, then overwhelming, then exhausting. The nervous system, unaccustomed to sustained closeness, signals retreat. This retreat is often misinterpreted as clarity. I need space. I function better alone. I don't want to lose myself. And again, these concerns are valid, but they also reveal the core conflict, the fear that connection will erode the self rather than expand it. At the heart of this tension is identity. When solitude becomes central to self-concept, connection feels destabilizing. It challenges the story of independence, self-sufficiency, and emotional control. Letting someone close is not just emotional risk, it is narrative risk. It threatens the identity built around autonomy. So the mind compromises. It allows limited closeness, surface-level connection, controlled intimacy, enough to feel human, not enough to feel exposed. but something remains unresolved, a quiet sense that depth requires more than observation. That being seen is different from being safe. The inner conflict is not a failure. It is a sign of complexity, of a self that values peace but still longs for resonance, of a mind that learned to survive alone but did not stop being human. This tension does not demand resolution. It asks for recognition, to see the longing without shame, to acknowledge the resistance without judgment, to understand that solitude and connection are not enemies, but forces that need balance. The conflict exists because something inside still wants more. Not more noise, not more people, but more being known. And recognizing that desire does not weaken solitude. It simply reveals that peace on its own is not the same as belonging. Awareness arrives quietly, not as a demand to change, but as an invitation to notice. For those who romanticize solitude, awareness begins with a gentle question. Is this aloneness nourishing, or is it protective? There is no accusation in the question, only curiosity. Self-observation reveals patterns. When does solitude feel expansive? When does it feel heavy? When does the body relax, and when does it brace? These distinctions matter. Chosen solitude restores, defensive solitude contracts. Awareness does not require abandoning independence. It does not ask for more socializing, more vulnerability, or more exposure. It simply asks the mind to notice why distance is chosen in each moment. Judgment dissolves insight. If the mind labels withdrawal as weakness, it will defend it harder. If it labels longing as neediness, it will suppress it faster. So awareness must be neutral, patient, and kind. Noticing without interpretation changes everything. The moment the self sees a pattern clearly, compulsion softens. The choice to retreat becomes conscious rather than automatic. Awareness also honors history. It recognizes that solitude once protected something fragile. That independence was not avoidance, it was adaptation. Respecting this origin prevents shame from entering the process. The body becomes an ally. Tightness, relief, fatigue, ease, these sensations offer information without judgment. They reveal when solitude is regulating and when it is isolating. This awareness allows nuance. Solitude can be preferred without being exclusive. Connection can be desired without being overwhelming. The binary collapses. Reflection opens space between impulse and action. The urge to withdraw is felt, but not immediately obeyed. The desire to connect is acknowledged, but not forced. In this space, freedom emerges, not freedom from solitude, freedom from reflex. The self no longer needs to justify distance with philosophy or identity. It can say honestly, I need quiet right now, or I want to be known here. Awareness without judgment restores flexibility. It allows the nervous system to learn that closeness does not automatically mean danger, that solitude does not have to mean disappearance. Nothing has to be proven, nothing has to be surrendered. The mind begins to trust itself, not because it is alone, but because it is attentive to its needs, attentive to its fears, attentive to its longings. This awareness is not a turning point, it is a settling, a deepening, a recognition that solitude is not the enemy. Avoidance is not the villain. They are signals, asking to be understood rather than defended. Integration is quiet. It does not arrive as a dramatic shift, nor as a sudden desire for closeness. It arrives as permission. Permission to keep solitude and permission to soften around it. Those who romanticize their solitude do not need to abandon it to grow. Solitude has been meaningful, stabilizing, and real. It offered space to think, to feel, to become. It protected something tender when protection was necessary. Integration begins when solitude stops carrying the entire weight of emotional safety. Connection in this space is no longer the opposite of peace. It becomes an extension of it, not loud, not consuming, not demanding. Gentle connection does not rush intimacy. It does not flood the nervous system. It arrives slowly, through resonance rather than obligation. A conversation that lingers without effort. A presence that does not intrude. A moment of being seen without needing to perform or explain. This kind of connection does not threaten independence. It respects it. The mind learns something subtle but important. Being known does not require being overtaken. Closeness does not erase the self. It can coexist with autonomy, not compete with it. Integration also means allowing longing to exist without panic. Wanting connection is no longer interpreted as weakness or contradiction. It is simply another human signal, neutral, honest, temporary. Solitude, when integrated, becomes spacious rather than defensive. It is no longer used to hide or harden. It becomes a place to return to, not a place to disappear into. Boundaries remain, but they are flexible. Distance is chosen, not reflexive. Presence is allowed, not rationed. This balance reshapes identity. The self is no longer defined by aloneness, nor by attachment. It is defined by responsiveness, the ability to move toward quiet or connection depending on what is true in the moment. There is no urgency here, no demand to be more social, no push toward vulnerability. Integration honors timing. It understands that trust is built slowly, internally first, relationally second. In this space, peace deepens, not because nothing touches the self, but because the self trusts its capacity to remain intact while being touched. Romanticized solitude matures into embodied solitude, no longer an aesthetic or defense, but a grounded presence. And connection, when it comes, is not overwhelming. It feels earned, not through effort, but through readiness. The mind no longer asks whether solitude is better than connection. It no longer needs to choose a side. It understands something quieter now. Depth is not found in distance, and peace does not require isolation. It requires honesty, gentleness, and the courage to let life move closer without losing the self that learned how to stand alone.